to prop up valueless financial institutions, that's a big problem. And so in that event, you're better off going with a value that is attached to some actual real commodity, which is gold. And that's why we're seeing the gold price go up, and that's why we'll continue to see the gold price go up, because there is no viable solution coming from those that have the money to print or the money to spend, throwing good money or good printed money after bad.
Well, Nomi,
it's very annoying. It's very, we talk about it could be so simple, and what is happening and the decisions being made and the way that money is being printed and the way that it's being used to float a non-viable financial system is continues to implode before our eyes, and yet those in power do nothing and recognize none of this as it continues to unfold.
Well, they consciously understand what they're doing. It's not just that they fail to recognize it. They plan on imploding the global economy, consolidating it, setting up tax systems to destroy industrial bases in the West, and then basically making us all welfare slaves to their largesse. And they intend to get away with their great crimes by installing a paramilitary tyranny over us. The only question is, will they get away with that? Are we going to let them get away with this? Now let's talk about the head of Goldman Sachs, the guy that says he's doing God's work, or was that Jamie Dimon? Was it Blankfein said he's doing?
No, it was Blankfein who said he was doing God's work.
Yeah, so he's doing God's work here, and they've had Senate committees, as you know, come out and say, yes, this is all illegal. They knowingly created and packaged stuff that was totally worthless and sold it to the world, and then held everybody hostage saying, prop us up or we'll take you down with us. And then now they've gotten the bailout money, and they've continued the same old activities and are saying, well, bail us out again while we get record bonuses. I mean, somebody has got to take the wheel of this car, of this train, away from these people, Nomi. So let's go over your article and the reports that he's hired this big lawyer.
Yeah, so basically, this April, the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, the PSI, came out with a report, a 650-page report. It mentions Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman, about 79 times. And about 250, 270 pages of this report is just on Goldman. The report's supposed to be about all of the abuses and crimes of the banking system at large, but it is about a third to more than that specifically on Goldman. So a fairly large chunk falls upon three major deals that Goldman did and their practices in general, whereby they knowingly, and the report's very damning. I mean, I encourage people to look at it. It's long, but it's damning. They basically knowingly took crappy assets and stuffed them into client investment vehicles, into things called CDOs, and they basically didn't give all the information to their clients as to what was going on the other side, which is that they were shorting or betting against not just the market, which is what Lloyd Blankfein continues to say, that we are just market makers. We are doing our job. If some people want to short the market, we'll short it. If some people want to go long, we'll go long. If some investors wanted to take more risk, they knew what they were doing. They paid for that risk back then. They took it. They're big boys. We're just doing our job. But the problem is that only works if you're not committing fraud or misleading your investors by not indicating the true value that you attribute to those assets you're stuffing into their securities. And the report, in a lot of different detail, shows emails and exchanges and internal documentation going on at Goldman that is in direct contradiction to the things that Lloyd Blankfein said in front of the Senate Subcommittee investigations last April, which is that he was just a market maker, which is that Goldman didn't have a big short on, which is that they didn't bet against their clients. Well, this report begs to differ. This report shows what we know is that this institution knew the value, not 100% as Blankfein. They were not fortune tellers, but they had more information on the value of the assets they stuffed, that they were called cats and dogs at the Senate subcommittee, into these securities that they did not tell their clients. And that's fraud. If someone sells you a car and the engine doesn't work and they don't tell, the brakes don't work and they don't tell you, and you get out of the lot and maybe you didn't try the brakes and you should have, but all of a sudden you tried and you slam into a truck, that's criminal. And that's what we have going on with Goldman. And Lloyd Blankfein was the CEO, and he also blatantly said to Congress last year that none of this was the case. And that's the crux of, I think, why he ultimately, under subpoena from the Department of Justice, went and hired a big-time defense lawyer, a guy who has represented Bernie Ebbers, who, by the way, is in jail, WorldCom CEO for 25 years, a 25-year sentence. Richard Causey, who was the senior accountant at Enron, who is also in jail, and a number of other big, high-profile criminals. And that's the guy that is now representing Lloyd Blankfein. That's not a good pack to be with.
Well, we know he's been subpoenaed. The problem is, as you've stated in your article, the SEC is a revolving door made up of crooks from Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, all these big insiders. And so it came out, last week, that they destroyed thousands of documents. Anytime a whistleblower brought them stuff about the big guys being corrupt, it got shredded, it got destroyed. We know for 11 years they covered up for Bernie Madoff. And Madoff has rightly said, hey, I did this because that's how business is done here. And to be competitive, I had to engage in fraud. This is all Ponzi schemes. Why am I the one going to jail? Well, he was lower down the totem pole. Sure, he founded NASDAQ and was high-powered, but not at that super big six bank level. So only Lloyd Blankfein and people like that are allowed to do this in Ben Bernanke, not Madoff. We'll be right back.
Did you know nuclear radiation is still spewing out of the melted down reactors in Fukushima, Japan, and making its way across the entire U.S. continent, contaminating the air, water, and food? Dangerously high levels of radiation are a reality here. As a result, radiation poisoning is a distinct possibility for anyone living in the U.S. unless you do something to protect yourself. How? With Liquid Zeolite from RestoreYourHealthNow.com. Without a doubt, Liquid Zeolite is by far the best product to remove radiation from your body. It safely removes toxins and heavy metals, boosts energy levels, and promotes a strong immune system. Liquid Zeolite is so powerful it was used to clean up contamination in Chernobyl, yet so gentle you won't even know you're taking it. Liquid Zeolite comes with a money-back guarantee, but is only available at RestoreYourHealthNow.com. Learn how to get free bottles of Liquid Zeolite by calling 800-880-9976. That's 800-880-9976. Or go to RestoreYourHealthNow.com. That's RestoreYourHealthNow.com.
Alex Jones here with vital information concerning our nation's fragile food supply. Folks, there are some truly dangerous trends forming, and I think it's important for my listeners to do three things right away. Number one, study the past. History really does repeat itself. Number two, learn to spot the dangerous food shortage trends. Number three, take decisive action. A perfect storm is brewing for a global food crisis. That's why I'm telling everyone to read the new book, Rising Prices, Empty Shelves. Warning signs that trigger the deadliest famines in history. Don't get caught unprepared when the crisis hits. This book is only available at risingpricesemptyshelves.com. You'll also get a free copy of Supermarket Survival, How to Cut Your Grocery Bills in Half. Again, that website is risingpricesemptyshelves.com. That's risingpricesemptyshelves.com.
Life Before the Collapse, Vinyl LP by the Lost Vegas.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Don't come knocking when your good friends lock you out.
Life Before the Collapse by the Lost Vegas on 180-gram vinyl and mastered especially for vinyl by legendary audio engineer Steve Hall.
This guy, why don't want me to this guy?
Life Before the Collapse by the Lost Vegas.
The Lost Vegas.
Now available at Amazon.com.
Last 30 minutes of the next hour, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts is joining us. He's got a great article out that was published at Infowars.com last night. 911, after a decade, have we learned anything? We'll talk about the anniversary coming up, then we'll shift gears into the economy. In the meantime, I'm going to take some of your phone calls that have been holding and get into this earthquake news where the mainstream media and the USGS admits the government, private institutions can trigger earthquakes. Really? So Secretary of Defense Cohen was being truthful in 1997 when he gave a press conference, and it was in the Army Times, that our government and other governments can trigger earthquakes. Really? I've got documents they could do it in the 50s. The 50s. Okay, going back, though, they even had geologists working on it in World War II. They're thinking about using a tsunami bomb on Japan. Oh, yeah, that's the 40s. So that is coming up. Also, we have an article, and really it was going to be an open letter, but it turned into an article. We're going back to Nomi here in a moment. At Infowars.com, and it asked the question, is Apple evil now that Steve Jobs is leaving? And I'll probably shoot a video in the next few days. It's an open letter to Steve Jobs because I know a lot about Apple, a lot about Microsoft, a lot about Google. And let me tell you, it is not as trendy and liberal as they would have you believe. It's a big part of the conditioning of the population. So the article's up there, is Apple evil? Going back to Nomi Prins, the former managing director at Goldman Sachs, something's got to give, Nomi. Just in your gut or in your political savvy, do you think they're going to get away with this? I mean, sure, they've got the military, the government, the so-called mainstream media, but at a certain point, is the system at large just going to let a handful of banking families completely wreck the entire global economy?
The optimistic side of me wants to say no, but the problem is that to get to a point where we are so wrecked because of this that there is absolutely no alternative but to slap these banks back, to let the ones fail that need to fail, to break up the speculative aspects of them to the ones that actually deal with like real people and real mortgages and real small business loans and actually create productive capital to grow this country. I think we're not at that point yet where it's so fractured, and that's a crazy thing to say, I know, after what we've seen over the last 2 years, but I think it's going to get a lot worse. When you don't fix the problem, you continue to throw money at it, to gloss over it, to make it seem as if it's gone away with how fractured and bad these banks are for the rest of our economy, it continues to fester, and unfortunately I think it's going to get worse before it even has the possibility of getting better. I would like to believe that the more that we know as individuals about what is actually going on, the less we will stand for it, and that between that being armed with information and anger and a desire to change this with things unfortunately getting worse for us, that somewhere we reach a situation where it does change. But I'll tell you, the guys in Washington, yes, both parties, this is whoever is running what, they are so invested, and I mean invested with their own money, invested with their philosophies, invested with who they do business for and how, that I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. And going back to Bank of America and Buffett, again, Buffett was the guy who invested also in Goldman, and today in Bank of America, one of the other things that happened today in Bank of America is that the one attorney general who was looking into all the fraud that was committed with respect to foreclosures and robo-signing and everything else that not just hurts people facing foreclosure, but anyone who's trying to sell a house. This documentation stuff isn't even just about foreclosures, but all the stuff banks have lost and defrauded people of has just gotten removed from dealing with settling the case. So those kind of signs show me that this is still, unfortunately, going on and getting worse.
That's right. Anybody that tries to oppose these people gets destroyed. Nomi, thank you.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
A very wealthy U.S. citizen is predicting that in 2011, we will witness the most important day in America in more than 50 years. He says it will change everything about our lives. The way you shop, travel, invest, educate your children, and even how you take care of your health and your own family. Now, this man has made some outrageous predictions over the years. The crazy part is, he's usually right. You see, he predicted the collapse of GM, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and America's biggest mall owner, General Growth Properties. In fact, Barron's called his work a dire prophecy.